Hi there, welcome to another episode of Consultus Chat. I'm joined today by Martin. Hi Martin, how you doing?
Hi, you alright?
Yeah, not bad. Martin, introduce yourself if you don't mind.
My name is Martin Smith. I am Head of Bureau Services here at Consultus.
Excellent. So Bureau Services, let's learn a little bit more about that. What is the high level purpose of a Bureau Service?
So in a nutshell, I normally describe it as everything that's utility invoice related. So my team will essentially do everything from bill validation, so looking at the invoice to make sure they're correct, down to financial control, so helping with reporting and financial forecasts.
Okay, excellent. And who are the typical stakeholders within any organisation that you're dealing with? Who are the people that you really provide this service to day to day?
So we have a lot of interaction with finance departments within organisations, so it could be anything from account payable people, so looking at invoicing, down to financial controllers who are looking at more sort of forecasting, budgeting, but it could also be energy managers that are sort of looking to monitor spend and usage as well.
So people that kind of are responsible for budgets and stuff within organisations and making sure that I guess what they bought, matches what they're actually paying later down the line. Okay, and so in terms of the type of businesses that perhaps are most suited to this type of service, what the typical kind of directions that it tends to go in?
So it tends to be more sort of multi-site organisations. Those multi-sites could be anywhere, from 10 large industrial sites where they've got high usage and it can get quite complex in the billing, all the way up to multi-site organisations that have got sort of thousands of sites across the country, essentially, or across the world in some cases.
Wow. Okay. So sort of anybody with a large kind of indirect spend that they recognise, being energy being one of the largest ones, or just those large complex portfolios that are ever changing, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so you could have a lot of movement in portfolios with sites coming on and coming off again. So it's just controlling that and making sure that you're not being invoiced for sites that you're not essentially responsible for.
All right. So tell me a little bit more about the specific elements of the Bureau service, what they are, and most importantly, the problem that they're solving for the different stakeholders that you deal with. Yeah,
no problem. So there's a few different tiers to it, and essentially we can get as much involved as a client wants us to. But I'd say we start off with the invoice validation. So essentially, as part of that, we'll go out and obtain all those invoices from all the suppliers. We make sure those invoices are correct down to the rates and the costs, or also down to the responsibilities and the portfolio, and also sort of monitoring the usage and things like that as well. So essentially, with utilities, the invoices can have multiple charges on. I mean, some of the invoices we get can have sort of 10 to 20 different charges per site.
Yeah.
And then when you're looking at flexible contracts and with pass-through charges, keeping on top of those changes as they happen as well, and making sure that they're correct. We have a lot of the expertise and the systems in place to kind of monitor those. And just ensure that they're correct, essentially, and what the customer is paying is correct. And if they're not being invoiced correctly, it's also ensuring that the customers are accruing for anything that may come and catch them up later, essentially.
Okay. How do you go about that accrual process? How does that work?
So the accrual process, it can be done in multiple ways. One way we do it is we'll flag it on any invoice validation reports to kind of say where charges may be missing or may not be matching quite what we're expecting. If there's overcharges, we'll also go to the suppliers and challenge them with the supplier on the customer's behalf, in a sense, and make sure that we're getting the credits and the rebills off the back of that to correct those errors as well.
Yeah. Okay. The supplier element of it, as a domestic customer myself, we all kind of have that situation where you ring the number at the top of the bill, and can be often left waiting or have to ring back multiple times and speak to different personnel. How does that work in your world?
So for us, we've sort of over the years established relationships with suppliers, so we've got sort of dedicated contacts within suppliers that we can reach out to kind of go through these queries and sort of chase up what's going on with them, what the general issues are. And again, it kind of, that's where our expertise come into it with the suppliers, is across all utilities, all the suppliers tend to do something slightly different.
Okay.
So we also have that kind of tracking and expertise to go, okay, well, we know how this supplier bills and we know how this supplier bills, and we can kind of tailor our processes and systems to those suppliers.
Yeah.
And again, it kind of helps where, as you said, when you get your utility bill at home and you can kind of generally check it and go, oh, well, I know that's my rate and I know that's correct. But again, when you've got all these multiple utilities, multiple suppliers doing it slightly differently, it can get quite difficult to, look at a bill and go, oh, I know that is correct, where we have that in place where we're able to do that.
Okay, excellent. In terms of the kind of key benefits of it then, you're kind of making sure that you check the bills. Do you help in terms of you do the accrual process? Do you support in helping businesses budget for energy?
Yeah, so there are two other tiers to it essentially. So as well as the bill validation, we can kind of then also help with a bit more of the financial control on it. So we can do things like payment files and payment journals for clients as well, to kind of give them a bit more instructions on what to pay and what not to pay on those invoices. We can then also facilitate kind of managing the supplier in terms of the account balances and payments and any kind of debt disputes and that type of stuff as well, so we can support with that as well. And that kind of just helps, again, just give a little bit more support in those areas. Then we kind of move into the final tier, which is then the financial reporting. So we can essentially give those forecasts and budgets to say, well, this is how much we think your energy spend is going to be over the next 12 months, for example, taking into account, again, your flexible contracts, all the changes into third-party charges and that type of stuff as well.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And obviously through that process, you're doing all of this work. How are you engaging with these different stakeholders? How are they kind of being taken on that journey?
So we kind of do it in multiple ways, in a sense. So I'd say the core part of it that kind of starts it all off is the data. So we're able to share that data on your invoicing and on your forecast and everything on dashboards and etc. So you can kind of see where you are with things. Again, with query logs, we can provide the query logs.
Okay.
Data on invoicing, where there's gaps in invoicing. So again, customers are aware where they need to still accrue for those balances. So that kind of underpins everything in a sense, and then those engagements then can come from that. So we can have regular check-in calls, regular meetings. Some of the more complex clients, we can kind of facilitate a three-way meeting between us, the supplier and the client, where we need all parties involved essentially to make sure that everything's ticking over okay. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. So kind of, it sounds like it's a kind of full end-to-end process of kind of from position one, picking up the bill and the full financial management all the way through to paying it, making sure it's paid, and debt isn't accrued, and etc.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Yeah. Excellent. So Martin, you mentioned large multi-site groups finding value in this proposition. What is it that they find specifically valuable, and how do you go about delivering that?
So what tends to be is if you have multi-site portfolios, especially quite fluid multi-site portfolios, so you've got sort of sites coming on board, off board fairly regularly, it could be quite hard to sort of track that the supplier's billing each site for the right periods. And that's something that we can help support with, is we will track that and we will challenge that with the supplier if needed. So that kind of just make sure, again, you're being billed for the right site at the right time as well. But then also, as you get into multi-sites and you've got more bills, in a sense.
So just a larger volume of work.
Of bills, so there's more bills. The more sites you get, the more bills you get. And then also making sure that you're then checking, all those charges on all those bills. If you're doing it on a spreadsheet, that spreadsheet's going to get pretty big, pretty fast. Again, that's where our system kind of supports that, and all those bills are going through a system and being logged within a system. And all those charges are then checked. So, you know, if you have got a big multi-site with multiple charges and multiple invoices, it's very hard to kind of then be able to spot where there might be one charge incorrect on one site, whereas we're able to do that essentially.
So outsourcing it from a finance function to a specialist provider will kind of add that quality and fundamentally just take away that time where it's perhaps not available within a typical finance function within most businesses.
Exactly. Especially with the expertise, because we have the expertise on those charges and on those suppliers. We know when we're able to kind of recognise where things are wrong and where things are correct. So again, it avoids raising queries with suppliers that maybe don't need to be raised, essentially, because we already know the answer on those occasions.
Excellent. All right, brilliant. So Martin, organisations that see energy and utilities as a large kind of spend for them, what are their typical problems, and how does your offering kind of help solve those issues?
So in terms of your large users, so you might not have I won't say a large portfolio in a sense, but you've got some really big sites, big users essentially, which then means essentially it's a really big spend on your utilities. So
for those sites. Greater sensitivity.
Greater sensitivity.
Every individual bill.
That's it really. So with those types of customers, their contracts can be a little bit more complex, which gives them great buy-in. But can make the billing a little bit more complicated essentially.
Is that where these sort of more flexible tariffs come in for larger energy spends? Is that what we're
that's it. And also a lot of the sort of pass-through charges that you can kind of get with those large users. An individual charge can have a much bigger impact than, say, a smaller, like multi-site kind of client. So making sure that those charges are correct and being charged in the correct way can also have big impacts for those sites as well.
How do you stay on top of the kind of flexible dynamic purchasing? Because as I understand, the from each month to month, the energy buying rate could be different. So how do you stay on top of that?
Again, it's all within our systems and processes essentially. So purchases are all sort of tracked through the system, which then can kind of give us an indication of what their billing rate should be.
So you're kind of pre-calculating what their bill should be, so that when it comes, you know kind of what it is.
That's essentially what we do. Is not just on the flexible commodity rates, on all the third party charges and all the fixed charges. We'll essentially produce an expected invoice. Essentially, that we can then do.
So you know what's coming.
So we know what's coming
before it arrives. Excellent. Okay, brilliant. So Martin, finally, tell me about the kind of key ingredients that are present in a valued bureau service.
So I think for me it kind of comes down to three elements really. It's people, processes and systems is where I would say brings the value into it. So with people, it's making sure that those people have the knowledge, they have a good understanding of the market across the different suppliers, the different utilities, different third-party charges and different charges that may come out. So having those people that know those charges, understand how the markets work, understand how the suppliers work, kind of brings in a lot of that value in a sense, because they've understood it, they've built those relationships with the suppliers essentially to help move things along. And then essentially it's having the processes and the systems to then support those people. So again, as I said, if you're looking at your domestic bill at home, you understand the charges, you understand what's on that bill, but then if you're then trying to log it in a spreadsheet, especially for multi-sites with different charges and everything, it can get that spreadsheet's going to start getting pretty big pretty fast essentially.
Yeah, we all know about that.
So essentially having a system that allows you to do all of that within a system, so upload the invoices into the system, being able to check those invoices within the system, compare one invoice to a previous invoice, all of that sort of stuff, being able to do that in the system really helps. And having that those processes that are kind of tailored to those different suppliers with all their different billing ways. Really kind of helps kind of streamline that through and brings a lot of the efficiency with that. And because all the invoice data is in a system, it allows us to then do all that reporting off the back of it.
Yeah.
So having it, with your a system that has all your supplies in, when those supplies are kind of coming on board, when those supplies are leaving, having your supply contracts in there with all the costs and everything that are in there as well, and then the invoices kind of complementing it as well. It allows us to kind of do all that reporting at the back of it, to be able to support clients and give them the visibility of what they should be spending, what they are spending, and being able to do those comparisons.
Excellent, thank you. Well, cheers, Martin. Thank you for your time. Join us again for another Consultus Chat. Cheers.